some session.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when are we starting this session right now?
Sir, within a 5 minutes, only 12 participants are there.
Okay. Okay. What would be the time for the each presenter?
So 5 to 10 minutes only.
5 to 10.
5 to
Okay,
10 minutes.
Okay. Do I have to intervene if they are exceeding their time?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hello. Dear participant, please be prepared for the presentation. I will call one by one by name. Then you present your time will be 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. And you ready your PPT and presentation, whatever you have. Okay. Following participant here, I'm taking the name Tapti Roy, Hina Nisad, Smita Srivastava, Roshan Jahan, Mrs. Manisha Singh, धृति तिवारी, दीप्ति आदित्य, सुमन रंजन, अंशु सिंह चौधरी, पल्लवी, and may also some participant miss who not submitted their topic and paper, maybe you present the paper. I am taking name Priyanka Soren, Tausif Ahmad, Aviska Thomas, Anjali Yadav, Renuka Naidu, Saina Wasim, Anur Hussain, Mohini Vaishnav, and Sonali Das. Now, time to start the technical session. I would like to call Tapti Rai. Please come and present your paper.
Good afternoon, respected Chair, Dr. Parth, and co-chair, Dr. Vandana Mishra, and hello to all the reporters and coordinators. So since the time is less, I'd like to talk about what I have written in the paper, since always we are already looking forward to publication. I hope that will be fine. Is it?
Tapti Rai, please on your video.
Okay, just give me a second. I thought
Okay.
that wasn't allowed because I'd tried once and then the video was switched off. Give me a second, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, this, am I visible to you also?
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So let me begin. I won't take much time. So my paper is titled Brahminical Scriptural Sanctions and Hindu Widow Remarriage in 19th Century Bengal. So this is a work in progress. The objective of the paper is to study the debate surrounding the upper class, not just the upper class, but upper caste Hindu widow remarriage debate, especially between the reformist factions, who were the liberal factions at that point of time, and the revivalist factions, the conservative factions. To give you an idea of who the reformist faction consisted of, I'll take the names of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then Maharishi Devendranath Tagore, Keshav Sen, mostly belonging to the Brahmo sect, and the revivalists would have the conservative Rajbadis of Bengal, like Shobha Baja Rajbadi, led by Raja Radhakanta Dev, then the Mullik Rajbadi, present day Marble Palace, which is called the Marble Palace. So moving on, my paper draws from Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's tract published in 1855, Marriage of Hindu Widows, which also led to the passage of the Widow Remarriage Act in 1856, and the responses to it in the text of Madhusudan Sriti Ratno. He wrote a book called Vidhava Vivaha Pratibad. Then Jogindranath Torko Chudamani, he came up with another book of the same title, Vidhava Vivaha Pratibad, and Prasanna Kumar Sharma, Vidhava Vivaha Shastro Viruddha, just to give you an idea of the volume of resistance that Vidyasagar had to face. So let me add that all these texts were written in Bengali with a high dose of Sanskrit shlokas and interpretations to it. So when I give my final paper for publications, you will see that I have translated all these parts, the relevant portions, and added it in my paper. So the paper begins with an appraisal of Hindu remarriage. There in my paper, I talk about the symbolic significance of all the say rituals. For instance, Panigrahan, then you have the Bashorghar and all of that. And then what do these scriptures, these rituals do is that they in a way spiritually sanction an indestructible marital bond that ties the wife to her husband in a manner that this bond is to be lasting for an eternity and is valid even after the death of the husband. So here the wife was responsible for the health and well-being of her husband, and every adversity befalling the wife was attributed to the lack of virtues. Every adversity befalling the husband was attributed to the spiritual lapses and lack of virtues of the wife. The death of the husband was believed to be caused by the lapses of the wife, something she failed to do, something she doesn't have. Hence, she was expected to atone for all her sins through self-mortification and self-effacement as a widow throughout her life. So, again, we have to understand that the widow is not a single category. They were defined in terms of her sexuality. So, all the texts that were related to widows, in a way, narrating their plight, you will see that it was all about a child widow who elicited maximum pathos. Then a young sexually active widow was perceived as a threat, as basically to the morals of the men of the family. And further, an aged widow post her menopause was deemed as a spiritual guardian, the matriarch of the family. In fact, Vidyasagar's proposal too was motivated, it is the hearsay and somewhere mentioned in the biography of his mother, by the plight of a child widow. And in a way, also he believed that the marriage of young widows was indispensable and would help in restraining their natural promiscuous desires. Vidyasagar drew his arguments in favor of widow remarriage from Parashar Samhita, Vrihanaradiya Puran, and Aditya Puran. His major argument was drawn from Parashar Samhita, however, and he gave 5 heads under which the woman was free to remarry, especially when the husband is absconding, he is deceased, he is impotent, he is adulterous, or he has renounced the world. Now, Madhusudan Smriti Ratna rejected his propositions and he reinterpreted the Panigrahan rituals of the Hindu marriage for the woman, saying that a woman was free to enter the Panigrahan ceremony only once in her life. Well, there was a mention of Draupadi in retaliation, which he interpreted in a different way, saying that though these exceptions are present, but each propositions of the scriptures had to be interpreted based on the basis of the social conditions. Okay. Then he also went on to say that all the widows who seek remarriage are lecherous women, they're adulterous women, and he goes on to say that their lustfulness would make them suffer infamy not only in the present world, but also make them be born as female dogs and female foxes in the next life. And then we come to Jogindranath Torko Chudamani. He absolutely refuted the proposition of remarriage for Hindu widows. And in fact, amongst all the texts that you will find against, say, widow remarriages, it is the most polemical text that I have studied till date. He says that Vidyasagar was deliberately reviling the innocent Brahmins and Hindu religion for currying favors with the British. He took an interesting stand. He said, according to Parashar Samhita, the marriage of Hindu widows could only be allowed if she emerged unscathed, unburnt from the fully burnt pyre of her husband. After the husband's body has been burnt into ashes, if the woman comes out intact position, no burn nowhere, then she is free to marry. But such feat was unattainable. Why? Because the Kali Yuga woman was already sinful. So widow remarriage was not allowed according to Hindu laws and ethics. Prasanna Kumar Sharma, on the other hand, who wrote Vidhava Vivaha Shastro Viruddha, He drew his propositions from Vriddha Harita Samhita. He was quite mellowed down in his approach, but he linked his arguments to the aspect of nationalism and said that it is important, the brahmacharya of the widows, Hindu widow following all the rituals of widowhood was important in strengthening the spiritual aspect of the nation. Why? Because the nation was already under attack by the colonial influences. So he reiterated that brahmacharya and all the rules of abstinence from the widows would absolve the sins of the widows which caused the death of their husbands in the first place. So, however, despite all these contentions, the Act of Widow Remarriage was passed in 1856, but it practically had little results because socially it was not accepted. According to 1881 census, 1881 because prior to that no proper census, formal census were not held except during the time of Lord Mayo, which again had a lot of discrepancies. So according to 1881 census, there were 98678 Hindu widows and almost double, that is 180084 Hindu widows of marriageable age group. I'm talking only of Calcutta. But almost none were willing to accept widows as wives. Any such marriage, which again Vidyasagar tried to arrange, came at a lot of personal expense on him. Any such marriage again was socially decried, and first such marriage was between Shirish Chandra Vidyaratna and Kalimati Devi, held on 7th December 1856. But then Kalimati Devi died within a few months due to cholera, and Shirish Chandra Vidyaratna went ahead to marry a virgin again. And another instance that would be from the middle class, I'll give you another instance from the upper class, that would be of Raja Dakshinaranjan Mukhopadhyay. He was a disciple, in a way, disciple of, you can say, Henry Louis Vivian de Rosio. So he had entered into an intercaste marriage with the Rani of Bardhaman, Maharani Basanta Kumari Devi, and the amount of resentment of Rabindranath Tagore marrying his son to Pratima Devi. So Pratima Devi was hugely talented, but then if you read the histories of Tagore household, you'll see that Rabindranath Tagore, Tagore's son, did not actually consent to marrying Pratima Devi. It was due to the machinations of Tagore himself that the marriage took place, and there are several other examples as such. And also, so my idea, towards as a conclusion, I would say that during the end, the followers of Vidyasagar left him, and towards the end of his life, he spent his days in a village called Karmata, trying to educate the girls and trying to uproot social evils. And another thing I would like to add as a trivia here, in case you are interested, that even his biographer, Biharilal Sarkar, he ridiculed him. Biharilal Sarkar is known as one of the authoritative sources on Vidyasagar. He even ridiculed him, Vidyasagar, for the failure of the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act, and in fact he celebrated this failure in long sections in his work. So that will be all for now. I hope I haven't bored you down. Thank you for your time.
Okay,
No, not really.
Tapti Rai, we have discussed very nicely Widow Remarriage Act and problem of widow in ancient time, and you have discussed the various Puran and Smriti. And I would like to all Pal Sharma sir, may he ask some
Okay.
comment and this.
Let me take my pen. I'll write down your comments. They will help me.
Tapti, a very fascinating, paper.
Just a second, sir. I'll write them down. Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah. I would like to congratulate you for a fascinating subject that you have chosen.
Oh, thank you.
You have tried to understand it from a feminist lens. There's one thing which I was just pondering upon, that you mentioned that there have been so much of discourse wherein Vidyasagar's Remarriage Act, and he has been ridiculed, as you mentioned, and there were a lot of polemical writings also coming up. And despite this fact, Widow Remarriage Act was passed. This proves that there was a substantial portion of society which was also favoring this social reform.
Oh, well, May I respond now or?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
respond.
So actually, this is best answered by Lata Mani in her essay where she talks about the concept of sati. And let me remind you that my entire thesis is revolving the access of women to gynecological health, which includes the case of widows as well. Okay, so now moving forward to this, you will see that when the sati pratha was removed, William Bentinck was the Governor General. So when widow remarriage was passed, William Bentinck was the Governor General. When the medical college was open for the natives, William Bentinck was the Governor General. So if you read even the say life of William Bentinck, by his biographers, you will see that he has this tendency to establish himself as the pioneer of many activities that he performed in the native land, in the colonized land, to uphold the banner of the Britannia. So this was a part of it.
Okay. So basically what you are saying is that there was absolutely no support, or there was lack of
Very
support.
little support. In fact, in my paper, I have added that, in fact, the revivalist had arranged for around 3.5 lakhs of signatures against widow remarriage. And if I may add,
Okay.
I'll add an interesting anecdote. When the 1857 revolts happened, so Bengal was clearly out of it, out of the picture. They weren't helping out. This Raja Dakshinaranjan Mukhopadhyay, which I have mentioned, he got the title of Raja only because he had helped the British during that time. From Awadh, he had been instrumental in passing these messages. So, coming back to it, the people, when there was this inflow of army men, the military men, the British military men to Calcutta, so people started believing, and it is in a native paper as well, that the military were coming to arrest Vidyasagar for the kind of furor he has raised in the society, the disorder he has raised in the society by forcing the government to pass the Widow Remarriage Act.
Okay, so the crux of the argument is that Britishers, and especially the Governor General who was there at that time, basically wanted to introduce these social reforms to be a pioneer, and this was part and parcel of the civilizational burden which they were
exactly.
trying
And also
to
you'll see that after 57, these things were quite measured. They were quite cautious when they exercised any such reforms, because the politics totally changed post 1857.
Okay, interesting work. I'm really impressed by the hypothesis which you are coming up with. Definitely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. You may now leave, and or if the panel has
I'd like to
any
wait
other
and hear
question.
the other papers. I hope it's
Okay,
fine.
fine. That's great.
I'll just
Okay,
stop
sir.
my
Thank
video
you.
and audio.
Next participant is Dr. Hina Nisat.
Yes, sir. Good
Please.
afternoon, one and all present here. I, Dr. Hina Nisat, Assistant Professor of Sociology, Karamat Hussain Muslim Girls College. Sir, please give me permission to
Yes, sorry.
PPT, for the PPT, sir.
Yes, please. You can share.
Sir, is it visible?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sir. So my topic is learning from Indian environmental ethics application for the contemporary sustainable development. तो बेसिकली जैसे कि सबसे पहले तो मैं यही चीज कहना चाहूंगी कि ये बहुत ही एक इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है एक्चुअली में प्रेजेंट टाइम में आज इस पे इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम के ऊपर वी आर टॉकिंग अ लॉट और एक्चुअली में सिर्फ बात करने वाली बात नहीं है यहाँ पे इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट और सिर्फ अगर हमें इम्प्लीमेंट करनी कोई भी चीज़ तो थिंकिंग तो इट्स अ फर्स्ट स्टेप आई थिंक सो बेसिकली जैसे इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम की हम बात करते हैं तो इट्स अ वेरी रोबस्ट एंड encompass a vast range of traditional knowledge फिलोसफीज हैं, इसमें साइंसेस हैं, कल्चर प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, एंड that have developed over the 1,000 years. So the paper is जैसे मैंने बताया, इसमें हम बेसिकली ये देखना चाह रहे हैं कि किस तरह से हमारा जो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट है उसमें अगर हम इंडियन एनवायरमेंटल एथिक्स के इफेक्ट्स को देखना चाहें, या उसके थ्रू किस तरह से हम जो हमारा सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट है या उसके गोल को किस तरह से फुलफिल कर सकते हैं, बेसिकली इस पे ये बेस है एक्चुअली में ये पेपर। जो मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स है इसमें मैं to identify the relationship between the Indian environmental ethics and sustainable development. And the second one is to understand how environmental ethics positively impact sustainability. And the third one is to explore how to overcome the challenges during the implementation of Indian environmental ethics to achieve the goal of sustainable development. Basically, जो methodology, as a methodology, the information was collected from the historical texts या contemporary sources, जो भी आज हमें sources available है उसके through, basically. सही स्क्रीन नहीं आगे हो रही है, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड नहीं हो रही है, एक्सक्यूज मी। तो बेसिकली यहाँ पर अगर हम सबसे पहले जो मेरा टॉपिक है उसके अकॉर्डिंग हमें ये देखना होगा कि क्या हम हमारे एथिक्स क्या है जो हमारे एनवायरमेंटल से रिलेटेड है। इसमें सबसे द फर्स्ट इज नॉन वायलेंस या अहिंसा की हम बात करते हैं। तो द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ नॉन वायलेंस एक्सटेंड टू ऑल लिविंग बीइंग एडवोकेटिंग फॉर द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ एनिमल प्लांट्स एंड इकोसिस्टम। अगर यहाँ पर मैं कोट करूँगा महात्मा गांधी का, तो उन्होंने भी बहुत ज्यादा इस सिद्धांत के ऊपर, उनका ये बेसिकली जो सिद्धांत था उसमें उन्होंने यही चीज कही थी कि हम मन में अगर हमारे बुरा विचार आता है तो भी वो एक तरह का वॉयलेंस है। तो अगर हमारे अंदर ये वाली फीलिंग होगी तो हम किसी भी तरह से वॉयलेट नहीं कर पाएंगे किसी भी, मतलब एक ह्यूमन बीइंग के अलावा भी जो बहुत सारे लिविंग थिंग्स हैं जिसको, जैसे सबसे पहले अगर वो देखा जाए तो पेड़ पौधों से कई बार हम उसको बिल्कुल ही मतलब इग्नोर कर देते हैं, काटना पीटना या जो भी चीजें ऑन द बेस ऑन द नेम ऑफ डेवलपमेंट। तो अगर ये वाली कि ये हम ये मतलब एक मन में अगर हमारी गलत चीजें आ रही फीलिंग दैट इज वॉयलेंस, तो ये तो एक बहुत बड़ा अपराध हो गया कि आपने अननेसेसरी जो है ट्रीज की कटिंग हो रही है एक्सेसिव, या प्लांट्स की है जो कि हमारे इकोसिस्टम को बहुत ही बुरी तरह से नेगेटिवली इम्पैक्ट डाल रहा है। फिर हम प्रकृति नेचर की बात करते हैं तो नेचर इज कंसीडर्ड स्केयर्ड एंड वर्दी ऑफ रिस्पेक्ट एंड रिवरेंस। ये भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है क्योंकि जब हम नेचर की बात करते हैं तो ऑब्वियसली ये पूरा गॉड गिफ्टेड, नेचर इज द गॉड गिफ्टेड, उसके लिए कहा जाता है कि ईश्वर का ये एक सबसे कह सकते हैं कि एक महान चीज है जो कि वो मनुष्यों को और ये एक ह्यूमन बीइंग के को एक तरह से उनकी लाइफ के लिए एक इम्पोर्टेंट चीज भी। फिर हम इंटरकनेक्टेडनेस की बात करते हैं तो दैट इज ऑल्सो ये किस तरह से हमें इंटरकनेक्ट कर रहा है इकोसिस्टम या लाइफ को, ह्यूमन हर तरह से ह्यूमन बीइंग और जितने भी नॉन लिविंग थिंग्स हैं या इकोसिस्टम में जितनी भी चीजें पाई जाती है उनकी। फिर सिंप्लिसिटी की बात की जाती है, जैसे आज प्रेजेंट टाइम में अगर हम बात करें तो कहीं ना कहीं जो है हमारी लाइफ बहुत शो हो गया है, लाइफ में बहुत ज्यादा दिखावा हो गया है, सिंप्लिसिटी से बहुत दूर। जो नहीं कर पाता है शायद वही सिंपल, जो कर सकता है वो जो है अपने ऊपर एक्सेसिव जैसे एक कंज्यूम करने वाली सिचुएशन आ गई है। यहाँ पर हम बेसिकली मिनिमम नहीं बल्कि एक मैक्सिमम कंज्यूम करते हैं। जो है हमारे पास चीजें हैं लेकिन हम उससे ज्यादा यूज करें, तो ये एक तरह से यहाँ पर ये जो प्रिंसिपल एनवायरनमेंट की सेविंग, ये एक तरह से एनवायरनमेंट के लिए बहुत ही ज्यादा नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट डालता है। तो इस तरह से ये जो आपका एक सिद्धांत की बात करें, इंडियन एनवायरनमेंट एथिक्स की बात करें तो वो ये बात करता है सिंप्लिसिटी की बात करता है या मिनिमाइज करने की बात करता है कि जो भी चीजें हैं अगर आपकी जरूरत की हैं आप उसको यूज, अगर आप वाटर ही है फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आप उसका यूज करें, अगर आपकी नीड कम वाटर से यूज हो जा रही तो आप उसमें उतने में ही करिए, उसको एक्सेसिव यूज ना करिए। अब धर्म की जब बात करते हैं, धार्मिक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, बहुत सारी चीजों को आप देखिए धर्म से जोड़ दिया, क्योंकि अगर हम इंडियंस की बात करते हैं तो पहले तो बहुत ही ज्यादा और प्रेजेंट में भी अभी भी लोग बहुत ज्यादा धार्मिक हैं। और मुझे लगता है कि कम से कम 50 से अबव % अगर कुछ गलत काम से लोग रुक जाते हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं एक फेयर ऑफ द धर्म या एक कहीं ना कहीं धर्म कि अगर हम गलत करेंगे तो हमारे साथ गलत होगा। तो धर्म तो एक इम्पोर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है जो इसमें है। फिर उसके बाद अगर हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की थोड़ी सी बात कर लेते हैं, तो इसमें क्या है कि एक हॉलिस्टिक अप्रोच टू ग्रोथ एंड प्रोग्रेस की बात करता है, नीड ऑफ द प्रेजेंट विदाउट कॉम्प्रोमाइजिंग द एबिलिटी ऑफ फ्यूचर जनरेशन, कि एक जिसमें हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट प्रेजेंट टाइम में लोगों का तो डेवलपमेंट हो, बट वहां पर हम इग्नोर नहीं करेंगे कि हमारी फ्यूचर जो जनरेशन है उसके साथ भी अच्छी चीजें होनी चाहिए, उसके लिए भी रिसोर्सेज होने चाहिए। ऐसा नहीं कि सारे जो इम्पोर्टेंट रिसोर्सेज हैं, वाटर है और सारी चीजें, उन सब चीजों को हम लोग ने जो है अपना ही यूज करके उनके लिए हम क्राइसिस में डाल दें। और आप प्रेजेंट टाइम में देखिए कि इसका बहुत ज्यादा नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है, कि हमारे टेम्परेचर बहुत ज्यादा इंक्रीज कर रहा है, हमारे जितने भी सीजन मौसम है आप सब सारा डिस्टर्ब हो चुका है। तो कहीं ना कहीं ये एक तरह से सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट ना होने की वजह से, बेसिकली अगर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट तीन चीजें जो होती हैं, एक इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट, सोशल इंक्लूजन की बात करते हैं, या एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी की बात करते हैं। कि इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट में आपकी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ के बारे में बात की गई है, आपकी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ हो, आपकी सारी चीजें हो, आपकी एजुकेशन हो, आपके पास एक अच्छी जॉब हो, आपकी फैमिली हो, आपके लिविंग हर चीज हो, लेकिन एक डिसेंट क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ होनी चाहिए। उसके बाद इनकम प्रॉपर होनी चाहिए, एम्प्लॉयमेंट होनी चाहिए, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। अगर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अच्छा होगा तो बाकी चीजें आपकी वैसे ही अच्छी हो जाएंगी। हम सोशल इंक्लूजन की बात करते हैं, जहाँ पर इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी की बात करते हैं। वुमेन्स जो कि आधी आबादी, उनको उनके साथ बहुत ज्यादा डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है, उसको खत्म करने की बात की जाती है सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की। उनको एक, क्योंकि अगर उनका इन्वॉल्वमेंट वुमेन्स का बढ़ेगा तो ऑब्वियसली कहीं ना कहीं ये पूरी तरह से हमारे देश में डेवलप करेगा। जेंडर इक्वालिटी होगी, जेंडर इक्वालिटी इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट, उनको हर तरह से एम्पावर किया जाए, उनको डिसीजन लेने का पूरा पावर दिया जाए। और एक सोशल जस्टिस की बात की गई, यहाँ पर सिर्फ वुमेन नहीं बल्कि और भी जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड सेक्शंस हैं हमारी सोसाइटी में, उनको भी इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी, उनके साथ भी इक्वालिटी की बात की जाए, उनके साथ सोशल जस्टिस हो। या एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी की बात करते हैं तो हम जैसे नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज की बात करते हैं कि उनकी सेफ्टी इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, और जितनी भी यूज ऑफ रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज हैं वो होना चाहिए, और इस तरह से रिड्यूस होना चाहिए पॉल्यूशन या वेस्ट। और हमारे यहाँ प्रेजेंट टाइम में बहुत ज्यादा स्कीम्स भी चल रही है, स्वच्छ भारत अभियान जैसा, ये एक कह सकते हैं कि ये स्टेप है पॉल्यूशन को खत्म करने के लिए, वेस्ट के। या कंजर्व बायोडाइवर्सिटी होनी चाहिए। तो सस्टेनेबल, अब प्रेजेंट
Dr.
टाइम।
Hina, sorry for the intervention. Come to your main argument of your research paper.
ओके सर, ओके
You have very less
जी
time
जी
now.
सर, आई विल
Yeah.
ट्राई टू कंक्लूड एज सुन एज पॉसिबल।
Mm.
बेसिकली अगर आप सस्टेनेबल, क्यों हमें जरूरत है कि हम फिर से एक बार जाएं फाइनली, मतलब अपने उस हजारों साल पहले जो हमारा कल्चर था, जो संस्कृति थी, उस नॉलेज को। क्योंकि अभी आप प्रेजेंट टाइम में देखिए तो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल को अचीव करने की बात की जा रही है, और बहुत अफसोस की बात है कि हमारा भारत अभी तक कोई भी गोल फिल नहीं कर पाया, जो कि इनके 169 टारगेट्स और 17 गोल्स थे। तो ये एक बहुत अफसोस की बात है। यहाँ पर अभी जीरो हंगर, पीस, जस्टिस और स्ट्रॉन्ग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, जबकि हमारे यहाँ जो हमारा इंडिया वर्ल्ड लेवल में अपने कल्चर के लिए, अपने हेरिटेज के लिए, अपने इंस्टीट्यूशन, फैमिली या रिलेशनशिप, इन सब चीजों के लिए मशहूर है, वो वही सब डिक्लाइन होता चला जा रहा है। तो इसको मजबूत करने की जरूरत है। तो बेसिकली यहाँ पे सर मैं लास्ट में थोड़ा सा इसको मैं बता देती हूँ कि किस तरह से अगर हम जो भी हमारे एथिक्स उसको फॉलो करेंगे तो ये सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट में यूजफुल। जैसे नॉन वायलेंस, पहले भी मैंने बताया कि नॉन वायलेंस होगा तो ह्यूमन तो प्रोटेक्ट होगा, उसके साथ साथ हमारे एनिमल, प्लांट्स, इकोसिस्टम भी होगा। या फिर हम जो है ट्रीज और वेजिटेशन ज्यादा से ज्यादा होना चाहिए, उनकी हम एक जो स्कैर्सिटी वाली फीलिंग होनी चाहिए उसमें, तो इससे ग्रीनरी ज्यादा होगी। फिर उसके बाद हम रिसोर्सेज उनको सोच समझ के उनको यूज करें, इससे हमारा सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट। वाटर कंजर्वेशन है, जो कि आज से हजारों साल पहले रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग, सस्टेनेबल वाटर मैनेजमेंट, इन सब चीजों के बारे में बात की है, उसको भी प्रेजेंट टाइम में हमको इम्प्लीमेंट करना होगा। इस तरह से एग्रीकल्चर में देखा जाए तो बहुत ज्यादा उस टाइम की टेक्निक्स उनको यूज करके हम प्रेजेंट टाइम में जो आज स्मॉल फार्मर्स हैं, या इस तरह से जो स्कैरिसिटी हो रही है, कमी हो रही है, फूड की इनसिक्योरिटी, उसको खत्म किया जा सकता है। एजुकेशन, जैसे सर अभी आपने ही बताया था कि अभी प्रेजेंट ये बहुत इंडिया का एक बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग एजुकेशन सिस्टम रहा है, जहाँ तक्षशिला और नालंदा, और ये बहुत खुशी की बात है कि अभी एक नया उसका कैंपस भी खुल गया 2024 में नालंदा का। तो वहाँ ये क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की बात की जाती है सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट में। और हमारे यहाँ जो योगा है वो वर्ल्ड लेवल पे उससे लोग बेनिफिट उठा रहे हैं, तो क्यों नहीं हम इंडियंस उठाएं इसका। या मेडिसिन, जो मेडिसिन वाले प्लांट्स है उससे हमें हेल्थ अच्छी हो सकती है, गुड हेल्थ और वेल बीइंग की। या फिर हम रिचुअल और बिलीव्स को फॉलो करके जो भी क्लाइमेट एक्शन है उनको फुलफिल कर सकते हैं। और सोशल वैल्यूज इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, जो हम सबसे पिछड़ गए हैं इसमें, पीस, जस्टिस और हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशन जो कमजोर पड़ गए हैं, अगर इन सब चीजों को फॉलो किया जाए तो ऑब्वियसली सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के जो गोल्स है उनमें हम फुलफिल नहीं करेंगे, बल्कि हम आगे आएंगे और हमारा जो है इस तरह से स्ट्रांग होगा। थोड़े से चैलेंजेस भी हैं क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ पॉपुलेशन ज्यादा है। हम मॉडर्नाइजेशन और ग्लोबलाइजेशन या लिबरलाइजेशन के नाम पे जो है बाहर के देशों की चीजों को कॉपी करते हैं, और हम अफसोस की बात है कि हम नहीं यूज कर रहे हैं हमारी चीजों को, जो है बाहर के लोग यूज करके और वो डेवलप कर रहे हैं। तो हमें रीडिंग्स की जरूरत है, ज्यादा अपनी नॉलेज को एनहांस करने की जरूरत है। कास्ट और जेंडर और क्लास, डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, रिलीजन, इन सब चीजों से ऊपर उठना होगा। वैल्यूज जो हमारी घट रही हैं उसको फिर से हमें अपनाना होगा, और जो है अपॉर्चुनिटीज भी ज्यादा मिलनी चाहिए। तभी जो है हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के गोल को पूरा कर सकते हैं। और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो हमारा इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम है और ये बहुत ही ज्यादा यूजफुल होगा। सो थैंक यू सो मच सर।
Parsa,
Thank you,
please
Dr.
give
Hina.
comment.
मेरे को सारी चीजें अच्छी लगी, आपने काफी अच्छा पेपर प्रेजेंट किया डॉक्टर हिना। दी ओनली क्वेश्चन इज दैट ये हम सब जानते हैं कि इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम इम्पोर्टेंट है, इंडियन एनवायरमेंटल एथिक्स बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है सस्टेनेबल गोल्स अचीव करने के लिए। तो बट द क्वेश्चन कम्स इज हाउ। ये जो हाउ वाला एस्पेक्ट है ये आप थोड़ा सा बता पाए अगर, ये कैसे होगा, ये मतलब हाउ आर वी गोइंग टू
सर मैं यहाँ पर एक बात ये जरूर कहना चाहूंगी सर, कि बेसिकली देखिए इतनी बात हुई कल से लेके आज तक, ये एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट, सर आपका भी मैंने सुना और भी सब सर लोगों का सुना, तो इतनी इम्पोर्टेंट बहुत सारी कॉन्फ्रेंसेस होती हैं, वर्कशॉप होती है इस तरह की, जहाँ पे वाद विवाद होता है। बट क्या होता है कि सिर्फ खाली हम लोग प्रेजेंट करते हैं और सुनते हैं, उसको इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं करते हैं चीजों को। और चीजों को इम्प्लीमेंट करना चाहिए। और बिल्कुल एकदम जैसे सर एक मतलब आपको अपने आप से कोई हमसे पूछने नहीं आएगा, कोई हमें टेस्ट नहीं करने आएगा, कोई हमें ऑब्जर्व नहीं करेगा, लेकिन हमें अपने आप से हेल्प करना होगा, हमें अपने आप से वादा करना होगा कि अभी जैसे बारिश का मौसम आ रहा है, बहुत हम लोग सुनते हैं, स्टेटस भी देखते हैं कि पौधे लगाइए, बट ये रिस्पॉन्स, ये ऐसा करना होगा। जब तक हम करेंगे नहीं चीजों को सर, तब तक तो कुछ भी नहीं हो पाएगा। और जब हम करें, लोगों को सिर्फ खाली बता के, उनको टीचिंग दे के ही चीजें नहीं हो पाएंगी जब तक कि, क्योंकि अगर हम खुद उसके बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल करें और फिर वो एक बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल के तौर पे होगा, तो लोग, मुझे लगता है कि सर ज्यादा करेंगे। और इन कॉन्फ्रेंसेस का सबसे बड़ा मकसद यही है कि जो भी हमारी बातचीत हो रही है उसको हम अपनी प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में इम्प्लीमेंट करें। ये मत सोचे कि हमारे करने से क्या होगा, क्योंकि पानी की एक बूंद भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है। और इसकी तरफ से, अपनी तरफ से भी लेवल पे, ये गवर्नमेंट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, किसी एक की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, हर किसी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है। अगर एज ए मदर ये हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि हम अपने बच्चों को ये चीज बताएं, एज ए टीचर ये हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कि अपने स्टूडेंट को हम इस चीज के लिए मोटिवेट करें, हम उनको कुछ इस तरह के जो है काम दें, घर में भी हम उनको काम दें कि आप ये करिएगा तो हम इस चीज का जैसे और अभी सर हो भी रहा है, चीजें बहुत हो रही हैं, जैसे बहुत सारे ऐसे कॉन्फ्रेंसेस वगैरह होते हैं, उसमें जैसे जो है पौधे वगैरह लोग दिया जाता है, मतलब कुछ और देने के बजाय। तो इस तरह से मुझे लगता है कि सर अगर करना ही पड़ेगा चीजें, और जब ज्यादा, क्योंकि हम लोग बहुत ज्यादा आबादी है यहाँ पर, करोड़ों में आबादी है, तो मुझे लगता है कि अगर थोड़ा थोड़ा भी सब लोग करेंगे तो एक बहुत अच्छा आउटपुट आ जाएगा।
ओके, थैंक यू डॉक्टर हिना।
थैंक यू सर।
Okay. Next participant is Smita Srivastava. She is, I think, absent. Next is Roshan Jahan. Manisha Singh.
Yes, sir.
Please present your paper.
Sir, there is a network issue in my area. Please allow me to present without camera.
Sorry.
Sir, there is
Okay. Go
my
ahead.
Sir, please allow me to share my PPT.
Okay, okay, allow.
Is my PPT visible? Is my PPT visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
My name is Manisha. I'm a research scholar from Department of Psychology, University of Lucknow. My topic is gender role and feminist discourse in a contemporary Indian cinema, a psychological perspective. First of all, we will talk about the introduction, what my topic is and why it is important. Because movies are a form of narrative art that shares similarities with traditional literature concerning storytelling. This study demonstrates the gender role and feminist discourse in Indian cinema from a psychological perspective. Bollywood films like Lipstick Under My Burqa, Pink, Anish 10, Queen, English Winglish, Thappad, and Fire challenge gender stereotype and promote women's rights and confront systematic injustice. Integrating psychology, cinema, and gender within Indian knowledge system highlights their cultural reflection, interdisciplinary relevance, and impact on societal attitude. Which enrich our understanding and promote discourse on gender role and empowerment in modern India. This paper analyzes how psychological theories like social learning, self determination, and resilience help characters' behavior and psychological impact of their gender role in these films, and also highlight the global significance of addressing gender equality and women empowerment through Indian cinema, promoting social change and self perception. Whenever we talk about the portrayal of women in traditional Indian cinema, we get to see many minimum image of women. Like we see women as a passive, domestic, submissive, and defined by men. She would be in some movie like someone's sister or mother, or her entire character would be framed around hero's love interest. But with time, Bollywood has started making movies attempting to change the stereotypical character of women. uh, these are some movies which shows the change in Bollywood. For example, English English housewife Shashi gains self-worth and confidence by secretly enrolling in English course. The movie Fires explores the same-sex relationship between sister-in-law Radha and Sita, challenging societal and family expectations, showing the psychological liberation through acceptance of their identity. In Lipstick Under My Burqa, four women from different backgrounds strive for freedom, autonomy, and against gender, class, and religious restriction. Lastly, we will talk about the Queen, which depicts Rani's journey of self-discovery and empowerment by going on a solo honeymoon after her fiance canceled their wedding. In all these movies, we can see a psychological barrier that after breaking, the female character moves forward towards self-acceptance, autonomy, and empowerment. Women as victim, which was a traditional portrayal of women in cinema. In contrast, today many such movies have been made in Bollywood in which women are not shown as damsel in distress, but are shown as a strong character who face troubles and not afraid of them and can take stand for themselves, like we see in movie like NH10, which portrays the brutal reality of gender-based violence and Mira's fight for survival, challenging female passivity. The movie Pink depicts the three young women defending themselves after sexual assault, highlighting the importance of no means no in society. And finally, the movie Thappad addresses domestic violence, showcasing Amrita's powerful decision to divorce her husband after he slapped her, emphasizing the self-respect over societal pressure. In traditional Bollywood movies, we often see how these relationship between men and women is viewed through the lens of patriarchal power dynamics, in which women must serve their husband and can take and must take care of their children and sacrifice their whole life. In Thappad, Amrita decides to divorce her husband despite her family view that she is overreacting. This reflects the patriarchal society that normalizes domestic violence and does not hold the husband accountable. Amrita's bravery in standing up for herself and relationship equality challenges societal norms. In Deepa Mehta's Fire, which explores the societal power imbalance, depicting two housewives and loveless marriage who find intimacy with each other. The film challenges traditional dynamics and
Manisha, sorry for the intervention. Sorry, I have to make this intervention. You are just simply reading these slides. Uh, what I'm asking is, can you give me an idea about the central argument of your research paper here. What fundamentally you want to say? Most of us have watched these
Sir,
movies and about the,
I'm coming to
yeah,
this.
please focus on that. Yeah.
In this paper, we will talk about the behavioral explanation of these protagonists through various psychological theories, such as social learning, which says that we learn behavior by observing others' behavior. So, in these films, we saw that English Winglish and Queen and Pink. These movies shows how social learning impacts behavior, and then we will talk about the self-determination theory, which is by Rand and Dacey, that says that people are motivated by their innate psychological need for autonomy, relatedness, and competence. We see in Lipstick Under My Burqa, these four women from different backgrounds assert their desire and independence. The film explores the theme of female sexuality and oppression, illustrating how these women navigate personal growth amidst societal expectation. The movie Fire focus on relationship between Radha and Sita, who find emotional and physical intimacy societal taboo. Their bond represents search for autonomy and relatedness in a restrictive environment. Both films critique patriarchal structures and highlight the psychological complexity faced by women seeking to break free from societal expectation. They underscore the importance of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And lastly, we will talk about the theory of resilience, which says that which is described as individuals' capacity to fight against stress, trauma, adversity, and basically we can say bouncing back from the situation. In a film, NS10, Meera confront honor killing and fearlessly speaks out against exhibiting the fight or flight response, when faced with a life-threatening situation. Her journey from victim to survivor illustrate the resilience in overcoming danger. Film Pink portrays the three young girls defending themselves in court after sexual assault, highlighting the psychological effect of victim blaming. The film depicts their distress and resilience in coping with fear, shame, and self blame. Both films explores how survivor experience and overcome.
Manisha, could you conclude?
Okay.
Can you conclude?
In conclusion, we can say such film explore societal norms on gender roles and feminism, and challenge gender inequality. And this paper examines how social relationship and gender roles, feminist discourse in Indian cinema impact individual and society, highlighting the transformation of cinematic representation and empower women and challenge societal norms. These films serve as a catalyst for social change, encouraging viewers to question inequality and promoting psychological empowerment in women. While advocating for promotion of these films to achieve gender equality goals, the study acknowledged the need for deeper analysis using diverse psychological theories that suggest future research to explore broader impact on both the gender. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Vandana, do you have any questions or any observation for Manisha? I think there is a question by Nagma. Is Indian cinema promoting the culture of objectification of women? This is the question to you.
Yes, we see in movies like women are portrayed as object in these films. अभी रिसेंटली भी काफ़ी सारे मूवीज आई हैं जिसमें वुमेन को एक शो पीस के लिए यूज़ करते हैं. उनकी एग्जिस्टेंस पे कोई ज़्यादा फोकस नहीं करता. हालांकि अभी बहुत सारी चीज़ें चेंज हो रही हैं. मूवीज ऐसी आ रही हैं जिसमें एक वुमेन को एक पावरफुल कैरेक्टर के तरह से दिखाया जा रहा है, बट अभी भी वो सारी चीज़ें ज़रूरी हैं और ज़्यादा फोकस करने की, क्योंकि फिल्म एक ऐसा सोर्स होता है जो हमारी सोसाइटी को एक इंफॉर्मेशन देता है, एक नॉलेज देता है. लोग फॉलो करते हैं फिल्म को, कैरेक्टर को, तो अगर हम वहाँ पे एक स्ट्रॉन्ग फीमेल कैरेक्टर दिखाते हैं, तो उसका हमारा एसडीजी का जो गोल है, अभी करंटली इंडिया की रैंकिंग 129th रैंक है जेंडर इक्वालिटी पे। तो हमें लगता है कहीं ना कहीं फिल्म का भी काफ़ी बड़ा रोल रहेगा अगर हम जेंडर इक्वालिटी को, उस दूरी को कम करना चाहेंगे।
Okay, fine, Manisha. Okay. Who's the next person? Can we have the next speaker? Can we have the next speaker?
Parth sir,
Yes.
sir, please conclude, give conclude remark.
Okay, okay. So these are the only papers that were to be presented in this session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. So
ये on video on करिए। एक मिनट
okay,
सर,
okay.
सर wait just minute. Sir, please on camera. Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So we had basically three papers in this technical session.
Okay.
The first paper was presented by Tapti Roy, and basically the crux of the argument was that widow remarriage had a lot of resistance, despite the fact that it was passed. It had a substantial amount of resistance in the Bengali people, and it was because of the efforts of the then Governor General that it was passed. It was basically a good social move. So many a times we see that uh, law is ahead of society, and this is a very important role that law is expected to play. That law actually is progressive and it challenges the existing norms of the society, which are not really progressive enough, rather they are regressive. So many a times law simply responds to things which are happening in the society, and sometimes what law does is it basically challenges the existing norms, and it is basically very progressive. So this was definitely a progressive move uh, in the otherwise patriarchal society. Uh, Dr. Hina Nisar presented basically a paper and in which she emphasized that a lot on Indian environmental ethics. She mentioned that Indian environmental ethics has been part and parcel of India's knowledge system, but now the challenge is how can we implement it in a better manner so that we are able to, uh, so that we are able to implement the sustainable goals to which we have been ratified. We have ratified the sustainable goals. So it's important how are we going to basically implement it. That is a challenge, and that is what she highlighted. Uh, Manisha Singh presented her paper on gender roles and feminist
Raj sir,
discourse in.
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
One participant requested to participate, if you allow.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, that's fine. So
Okay, कौन है? कौन है? Dipti? Dipti,
Yes, sir.
please present the paper.
Sir, can I present?
Your time is
yeah, go ahead, please, Dipti.
Okay.
your time is only 10 minutes maximum. Okay, start.
So please allow me to share my screen.
Now you can share your PPT. Okay, it's visible. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepti Aditya, and I am a research scholar from Department of Psychology, University of Lucknow. The title of my presentation is Ancient Indian Literature and Its Global Influence, a Psychological Outlook. So to begin with my presentation, I would like to give an introduction about the ancient literature, which is the one of which is one of the oldest and most influential bodies of work in human history. It is the largest collection of manuscripts, and it includes poems, philosophical treatises, dramatic works, and a rich form of storytelling as well. From Vedas to Upanishads, there are many texts in our literature that greatly shape the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual landscape of our world. At this point, I would like to quote a statement by Albert Einstein, which is about India. The statement goes like, "We owe a lot to the ancient Indians, teaching us how to count, without which most modern scientific discoveries would have been impossible." This serves as one of the major evidences for that global influence of our Indian literature and text. Now, what is the importance of studying these ancient Indian texts? I have summarized in my research part. Ancient Indian knowledge system includes various disciplines like philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and much more. And many modern discoveries are there which have their roots in our ancient literature as well. For example, the decimal system and the concept of zero was originated in India only. The holistic learning and different aspects of knowledge are highly relevant today, as we need an interdisciplinary and interconnected thinking to solve some complex global challenges. And principles like learning, yoga, ethical values found in ancient Indian wisdom can be applied to our modern education system to make it more effective. And studying these ancient Indian literature and text help us appreciate the diversity of our human civilization and the universal values. Uh, Now, if we are starting, if we are analyzing the ancient Indian literature, we should begin with the Vedas, as they are the oldest text in our Hindu and Sanskrit literature. Vedic knowledge can be used for psychological growth through spiritual practices, and they are they have those ethics which are necessary for our mental health, which helps us to stay motivated and concentrated. Now, talking about the Vedic philosophy, the heart of our Vedic philosophy is the Atman, the eternal, unchanging essence of the self, and the ultimate goal described in these Vedas is to realize one's true nature, which is the Atman, and attain the liberation that is known as the moksha from the cycle of birth and death, which is sansar. This journey of discovery has various stages of personal growth and evolution, which are guided by the principles of dharma, karma, and yoga. Now, these are the four Vedas, and since my objective of my research was to get a psychological outlook of these texts, I'll talk about the psychological perspectives of these Vedas. First is the Rig Veda, which means to praise knowledge.
Deepti, I have
Some
a question.
Yes.
Sorry for interjecting. Have you come across any study wherein these practices, these Vedic practices of Atman and Atmachintan, which you have mentioned, have positively contributed to a better psychological focus mindset or something of that sort? Any scientific study
So
that you have come
the,
across during your
these
research?
concepts forms the base of the Indian psychology, the field known as Indian psychology. So sir, हम लोग ये Indian psychology पढ़ते हैं, and it is directly applied to the field of psychotherapy and some therapies.
Okay,
उससे
okay.
इन concepts से कुछ therapies वगैरह भी निकल के
But
आती हैं.
there are research papers which have clearly documented the positive impact of such
Yes sir,
things.
yes sir.
Yeah.
Therapeutic applications.
Have you mentioned this in your slide? Any of such?
Yes sir. Like Upanishads का काफ़ी सारा context है in the field of cognitive behavioral and social psychology,
Okay.
like the
Okay.
concept of self or atman, or the ultimate reality, or which is also called as brahman, can be directly linked to cognitive behavioral therapy, which suggests that our thoughts and beliefs shape our actions and behavior, same as the fact that atman is part of the universal brahman. And according to Upanishads, the ultimate goal of life is to achieve self realization. This can be straight related to mindfulness based therapies used
Okay.
nowadays,
Okay. Okay.
which
Okay.
suggest
Okay.
meditation can lead to greater emotional regulation and stress reduction. And
Okay.
by practicing detachment, Upanishad have also mentioned the importance of detachment to material possessions. This is directly related to behavioral psychology, and also they mention about the interconnectedness of the all of the things existing in the world, and we should strive to live in harmony with the universe. This can be straight related to social psychology.
Okay.
Some key takeaways from Vedas and Upanishads can be understanding of reality, the ethical principles of dharma, karma, and moksha, understanding the purpose of life, and it also provides a holistic worldview, emphasizing from all the aspects from the material to the spiritual well-being. Then now coming to the Bhagavad Gita, uh, there is a traditional theory of well-being in positive psychology that categorizes happiness into two: hedonic and eudaimonic. The now we can compare this psychological concept with some instances present in the Mahabharata. Like we can see Arjuna, who enjoyed the hedonic state as he was a great archer. Through actualizing his potentials in the archery, he uh, s- uh, attained the stage of self actualization and self realization, which is known as the eudaimonism. But eudaimonism does not always have the positive aspect. Sometimes sometimes the person may struggle from misfortune as well. For example, we can take Eklavya, who without any hesitation cut his right thumb hand and offered to his guru. Here, Eklavya experienced the hedonic happiness, but that aroused from his suffering, which later resulted into the eudaimonism. We can also talk about Pandavas who
If you have
led
to
their.
define, sorry again for that is very interesting. Can you define for people who are not from the
Okay,
psychology
sir. Yes, sir.
background,
The two
what
concepts.
in short,
Yes, sir.
eudaimonism, hedonist is principles I understand that is
Yes, sir.
basically
जो
material.
हाँ
Yeah,
मटेरियलिस्टिक एंड टेम्पररी प्लेजर प्रोवाइड कराते हैं,
yeah,
that
yeah,
those things come under hedonism. And
mm,
eudaimonism is the last stage of liberation, which can be explained by uh, mm, attaining self actualization and the ultimate goal of merging with the divine power or the supreme power. Slightly similar with the concept of moksha,
mm.
it is eudaimonism.
Okay, okay.
So Pandavas also exhibit the. We can compare the situation of Pandavas when they were in exile with the eudaimonism. They were living happily with their true self, and actualizing their potential with the use of sadhana and practices. And Therefore, they achieved in the battle. On the contrary, we can talk about Duryodhana, who placed his interest only on the extrinsic goals, which were the wealth, and later he suffered mentally and physically. Bhagavad Gita also teaches us some lessons for life, which can be that duty must be performed without any attachment to the fruits, maintaining the moral integrity, detachment and self control, and aligning one's ambitions with their swadharma. Coming to the great epic of the Ramayana, there are many instances in Ramayana that depicts the contemporary psychological concepts. Some of them are mentioned here. Go. I'll talk them about in brief. The eudaimonic well-being can be compared to the situation of King Dashrath when he sent his son into exile. During this period, he was unable to live fully to his true self. Therefore, he suffered physically. According to an author, Ganesh, Ra means light, Ma means within me. So, Rama means light within me. And he also classified Ram as the soul, Sita as the mind, Hanuman as the breath, and Lakshman as the conscious awareness, and Ravan as the ego, which is somewhat similar with the concept given by some psychologist in western part of the world. According to Vishal, 10 heads of Ravan depicts 10 psychological factors which are lust, anger, delusion, greed, and etc. According to Sri Ravi Shankar, when mind, which is Sita, was stolen by the ego, which is the Ravan, soul, which is the Ram, got restless, and the soul took help of breath, which is here Hanuman, to find mind. Then mind got reunited with the soul, and the ego, which is the Ravan, vanished. Ramayana teaches us some values or lessons as well, such as importance of honor, loyalty, and duty. The power of sacrifice through the examples of Lakshman, Sita, and Hanuman. The victory of good over evil, moral dilemmas, and ethical principles, and the wisdom on leadership, compassion, forgiveness, and importance of holding the integrity in the adverse situations. As we can see that these epics also contribute a lot towards the area of mental health. Some instances could be that Bharat provides a depiction of human emotions that we face in day-to-day life. Dealing with loss and grief, acceptance and resiliency are also depicted in Gita, uh, which uh, which emphasizes living in the present moment and the therapeutic approach to manage anxiety and tension. Sita's character in Ramayana depicts resilience, motivating us to become more resilient in life, and the narratives in Ramayana that teach us about loyalty and establishing distinct boundaries to protect our mental health and accepting transience and letting go of the old grudges are some essential mental health practices that could be embraced. Some psychological implications from these ancient Indian literature uh, uh, in totality are understanding the self, the ethical principles of dharma, karma, and moksha, dealing with the adversity, emphasis on the holistic well-being. The transcendence of duality means the illusory nature of some dualities which are accepted universally, like happiness and suffering, success and failure, good and evil. Also, the meaning and purpose of life, which is to attain moksha or the self realization, uh, are also mentioned in these great epics. Some psychological implications, significant psychological implications which can be applied to the diasporic population are like engaging with these texts helps those people to shape their strong cultural identity and sense of purpose. The emphasis on community, family, and social harmony creates a sense of belongingness in their lives, and by through the oral and written transmission of such wisdom, they preserve the cultural continuity and cultural heritage of our country. The teachings from these books provide them the psychological resilience and coping strength as well. Overall, it promotes the holistic well-being through these cultural values and the methods like yoga and meditation also.
Dipti, please
Yes, sir.
conclude.
Yes, sir. Coming to that. Also, these ancient text and literature talks about the significance of some cultural values and ideologies, the like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which directly translates to the world is one family. This appears in the Maha Upanishad and it is considered the most important moral value in Indian society. It promotes the sense of universal kinship and it is based on the principle of collectivism, which is mentioned in psychology, which can foster the psychological well being by reducing the prejudices and inspiring people to work together. Uh, the the concept of dharma is translated as the righteous conduct or ethical duty, and this provides a framework for living virtuous life. This this can lead to psychological resilience, inner peace, and sense of purpose. Karma states that every action has a consequence, and the individuals need to take responsibility for their own choices and behaviors. Moksha is the ultimate goal in Hindu philosophy, and it signifies the attainment of spiritual freedom and contentment. These ancient values are also um, adapted in some different cultures as well, like for example the African philosophy of Ubuntu and the Korean concept of Hongik Ingan, and along with the concept of earth, these three forms the four pillars of Hinduism as well. The cultural value related to family orientation is also highlighted in the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharat, that provides a strong emphasis on strong family bonds and foster a sense of belonging, support, and identity in life. These are just some of the values present in our ancient literature that I have mentioned here. So, to conclude my presentation, I would say that these ancient texts uh, offers a wealth of psychological insight resonating with the audience across the globe. It has a global influence, and these metaphysical sites from Vedas and the teachings of Bhagavad Gita or the Ramayana provide a comprehensive structure of navigating the difficulties of human life. By embracing concepts like dharma, karma, and moksha, we can enrich our understanding of the self and cultivate greater empathy, collectivism, and find deeper meaning in life. These texts uh, provides us deep understanding of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors as well, which is the core concept of the field of psychology. As I mentioned earlier, we face a lot of challenges in the modern world. So, some psychological implications drawn from the ancient literature can help us boost our mental health, personal growth, and pursuit of meaningful life. In this way, the global influence of these ancient works is evident from this analysis, and the present study seeks to enrich our understanding of the human behavior, inspiring us to promote greater self awareness, compassion, and harmony within the world around us. Thank you, sir.
Deepti, I would just like to give you one suggestion. Uh, Wonderful paper that you have presented, but what I fundamentally believe is that there is an art of presenting a paper and writing a paper also. And that is basically that you should just narrow down your research a bit, because you have given a lot of insight. This is like presenting an entire thesis. So rather than if I would have been a student, what I would have done would just pick one source, maybe Ramayana, maybe Mahabharata, maybe just Bhagavad Gita, and just go deep into it and just focus on what are the two or three important takeaways or key learnings which would actually improve psychological and mental health in general. Just for future, whenever you are presenting,
Yes,
just
yes, sir.
a very small aspect of it and just go deep into it
Yes, sir.
rather than
Yes, sir.
just touching upon a whole range of issues. That is the only suggestion. Which otherwise it was a very good paper, very interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Parth sir,
Yeah.
sir,
Uh,
please on your camera and conclude. Sir, one request is कि if possible, please share your email ID. Some participants are requesting your email ID.
okay. Okay. I'll just write in the
Please share
chat
your
box.
chat box in your email.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just writing. I have just shared both the my personal and as well as
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Please
okay.
continue.
Okay, so we had uh, two more papers that were presented. One was basically both the papers were from the psychology background. One was presented by Manisha Singh, and wherein she highlighted uh, gender roles and feminist discourse in contemporary Indian cinema, a psychological perspective, wherein she basically dealt with the fact that how the discourse over Indian women have changed over a period of time. Earlier, women, whenever were to be portrayed, they were just portrayed as supporters. They were just portrayed as supporters who were primarily supporting their male counterparts. But over a period of time, what we have seen, there has been a change of discourse, and women, rather being just simply supporters of men, have acclaimed a mainstream position in Indian cinema, and they are challenging the existing social norms that are prevailing, and in this process they are actually changing these social norms also, which to me is a very good development, and she very comprehensively portrayed this change of discourse in India cinema by highlighting major movies including Pink and Thappad, and how these are moving. These movies are testimony to the fact that the uh, discourse is on women in India is fast changing. Then very interesting paper was also presented by Deepti Aditya, and in which she mentioned that how the ancient Indian text and the epics like Mahabharata, like Ramayana, and Gita, Vedas. These are unique repositories of knowledge, which are relevant in even in the contemporary world. Because most of the problems that we face are, most of the moral dilemmas that we face these days. During the COVID, we saw that mental health became a central issue, and how these texts and how these practices, the yogic practices and the practices of Atmanana Chintan, can actually result into better healing of human mind. It could help you keep focused, and in general can promote human well-being. So very interesting work, and these type of works are getting a lot of importance these days. I remember that a lot of people these days are taking these mental health issues very seriously now, and the kind of therapies that most of these clinical psychologists offer actually take recourse to all such ancient Indian texts. So if I believe that students are being taught these literature, I'm sure these texts and these literature, they can in general promote human well-being. So very interesting papers, very good insights that we got from the papers that were presented. Uh, that's it from my side. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to chair this session, and I was immensely benefited by the kind of papers that were presented. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And time to conclude the today's session. I would like to request my colleague Dr. Bandana Misra to forward up thanks.
Once thanks you all participants to showing their diverse knowledge in various areas of Indian knowledge system, such as Hindu widow remarriage and gender discourse, and Indian environmental ethics and model of disability. So different areas you have to cover, and now it's time to vote of thanks. On the behalf of Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, once again, I want to show our gratitude towards the chair of this session, Dr. Parth Sharma. Thank you, sir, for joining and chair this technical session on Indian knowledge system. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot from the papers which were presented. It was immensely helpful and enlightening for me as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, dear participant, tomorrow we will meet on scheduled time. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.